सेव किया था ना?
मैं सिर्फ इसलिए गया था क्योंकि उसने मुझे कॉल किया, that's it. But listen तो.
Save it for someone else.
जिंदगी में सेव करना जरूरी है, मगर जब बात पैसों की हो, सिर्फ सेविंग से काम नहीं चलेगा। इक्विटी म्यूचुअल फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट कीजिए और अपने सेविंग्स को आगे बढ़ने का मौका दीजिए।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
We have a fascinating story to tell you today, but you know what? I am confused in the very beginning in terms of what to call it. Is it a story about a part of the world, a large geography with not that many people, but a humongous geography that we almost rarely talk about, but now cannot not pay attention to? If so, is it about a part of Asia, a part of Europe, Eurasia? Is it just Eurasia plus Central Asia, but also the Middle East? Or in the end, is it about one country? And that one country with a completely broken economy, 80% inflation rate, is showing the whole world how to punch above its weight with an incredibly smart use combination of hard power and soft power. Hard power also in the sense of an instrument of a tradable and exportable instrument of hard power, and loads of soft power going back centuries, that is ethnicity. So you must have figured by now what am I talking about. I'm talking about Eurasian region, that is the Transcaucasian region. Caucasian region, but more the Transcaucasia. Now if you see the map of this part of the world, you can see it's like two big Caucasian ranges. One is the Greater Caucasus and then is the Southern Caucasus. So the region that we are focusing on is more the Southern Caucasus, but that also is a kind of borderline between Asia and Europe. And in one part it is Central Asia, on the other part it is more of Western Asia. And this is where, this is also Russia's soft underbelly. A lot of Russian vulnerabilities come in this area. In fact, if you look at the extreme southern end of the Greater Caucasian range, you will find a tiny region called Dagestan. It's a Russian republic within the Russian Federation. Dagestan does not have that much population. It just has a population, I think, of just over 3 million people. But you know what? A bulk of them are of Muslim origin. And many of them are of Turkic origin. And if you look at what's happening in Russia right now after a mobilization has been announced to get able-bodied men with some military training, etc., some background to come and join the war in Ukraine, there has been a lot of protest in many parts of Russia, but a lot of these protests, toughest protests, have come from this place called Dagestan, which has a strong Islamic and Turkic imprint. This is the reason I call it Russia's softer underbelly. Chechnya is somewhere there in the same region, as is then Georgia. Now, Georgia is an important country. It's a republic now. It's been a republic since 1989-90 when Russia broke up. In fact, it was one of the first ones here where protests had started, where secessionist protests had started early on. And once again, the Russians have been worried about it. That's why in 2008, Putin had launched war and an invasion on Georgia, pretty much on the same excuses that he's used in Europe, that people loyal to Russia or people of Russian origin or Russian speakers, they were being victimized, there were genocides against them. So he sent the armies in and he carved out two enclaves there, two sizable enclaves called Abkhazia and South Ossetia, which he recognized as republics, but not many other countries have done. So this is the southern part of Russia. That is what Russia worries about. Now, what is the southern part of Russia is the eastern side, east and the northern side, for another unusual power. Unusual in the sense that I told you its inflation rate is 80%, its economy is in a shambles, but it has a history. It has a history of having ruled this entire region. And that history goes back to medieval times, to the Ottoman Empire, which ruled this entire region and beyond into Europe for more than 500 years. Now, they play a role in this entire region. And part of the reason they play this role is because people of their ethnicity, Turkic people, are spread all over in these regions. So Dagestan also bulk of the Muslim population is Turkic population. Once again, if you look next door to Turkey, that is in the heart of Transcaucasia. The war between Armenia and Azerbaijan we know about. We've talked about this on Kartak letter in the past, and that's where Turkey became a partisan with Azerbaijan, not just because Azerbaijan is all Muslim. Azerbaijan also paid the top dollar for its Bayraktar drones, which is the instrument of war, instrument of hard power, I said, which has given Turkey this unusual position in that world. But also because Turkey has had a 100-year issue with the Armenians. And remember, we talked about this, the 1915 Armenian genocide, where almost 1/3 of all Armenian population had been massacred. So that history continues. Beyond Armenia, there is Georgia. I just spoke to you about Georgia, where Russians invaded in 2008 and took out these enclaves to weaken Georgia and also to dismember it. That's where now, because Georgians have been worried about the Russians, Georgians want NATO's protection. Georgia also is a Black Sea country. Look at the map of this part of the world again carefully. I'll have it shown to you on my full screen, and see the expanse. See Dagestan and Kyrgyzstan. That is at the other end, at the eastern end of this map, and that area juts into the Chinese Xinjiang province. That is the Uyghur area. Uyghurs also, by the way, are ethnic Turks of Turkic origin or Turkic ethnicity. But from there, it extends right through the Eurasian region, touching the East European region into Syria. And there is a reason we say why it goes into Syria, because Syria also has a community called Circassians. Now, Circassians are people who were driven out of Russia after the Russo-Circassian War in 19th century. So a lot of them, very many of them were massacred, and rest were then scattered all over the world. All over the world means basically in parts of Eurasian countries, Turkey, and some Middle Eastern countries. So about 1,20,000 to 1,50,000 of these Circassians of Turkic origin live in Syria as well. They are Muslims, and in fact, the belief is that Putin intervened in the Syrian war to help Bashar al-Assad, because he wanted stability there. He wanted somebody to control Syria, because he was worried that at some point these Circassians will also start coming into Russia, because he has problems with republics in his federation who have a large Muslim population. Chechnya, we know about. Dagestan, we are now hearing about. And if more of these had come in, that would have meant more problem. Now, in all this area, Turkey's shadow hangs bigger than life size, because it's not just ethnicity, but also Turkey has its geostrategic location. You can't get in and out of Black Sea without Turkey's say-so. And Turkey is a member of NATO, a country that's essentially Asian, only a little bit European, but as a member of NATO, a European power, so a classical Eurasian power. So the world had thought of the P5, and then we thought of the other countries, India, Japan, Germany, Brazil, and other countries, other big countries, but somehow we had never paid attention to this Eurasian power, which is European only a little bit, tiny bit, a wee bit, but straddles Europe and Asia, controls the gateway to Black Sea, and controls also the gateways between Europe and Asia. That is a country called Turkey. And now it has found this great instrument of hard power called the Bayraktar drone, which it is selling. And that is what's so fascinating. It is selling the Bayraktar drone to Ukraine. It's been so successful that Ukrainian armed forces have even made a song about this. In fact, I will pause for a couple of seconds. You can just hear a couple of notes of this song, and we'll share a link with you. This is marvelous information warfare. Ukrainians have been good at that.
Bayraktar. Bayraktar.
But one reason the Ukrainians have been able to keep the Russians at bay is the Bayraktar drone. Now, Turkey is offering or planning to set up a plant in Ukraine while a war is going on in areas not affected by war to set up a factory to make Bayraktar drones. Now they've got Bayraktar drones there, they've got Bayraktar drones in Azerbaijan beating up the Armenians. They have now given armored personnel carriers or infantry fighting vehicles to Georgia. To Georgia, why? Because Georgia is afraid of the Russians. In Georgia, there are lots of protests against the Russian war on Ukraine, and Georgians worry that one of these days Putin will come for them also, because Putin in any case wants to put together all of the lost territories of the great Russian Empire. So he has sold these weapons to Georgians also. At the same time, he keeps his equation with Putin. He's mediating between Putin and the rest of the world. So much so quicksilver, mercurial, you can say whatever you want. So sharp has he been that while he's given the instruments to Azerbaijan to defeat the Armenians in the Nagorno-Karabakh war, and again in the conflict that happened just a couple of months back where nearly 300 soldiers died from either side, he's now at a European summit in Prague. He's been able to bring together on the sidelines of a European summit in Prague Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan of Armenia and also President Aliyev of Azerbaijan. So that is the power he now exercises. So see how this game is now being played out in this entire vast region. Now, if you look at the Chinese worry about this a great deal, because Chinese know that their Uyghur population is also essentially Turkic. So the largest colony or the largest camps of Uyghur exiles or refugees who've run away from Xinjiang are in Turkey. And routinely their groups organize massive protests against China there. Now Turkey's Erdogan is careful now not to annoy the Chinese too much. So he's now controlled those protests a little bit. At the same time, in Russia, after Putin announced mobilization, tens of thousands, in fact hundreds of thousands of Russians have been leaving. They're fleeing their borders to escape the draft as the Americans might have called it, or the conscription. So many of them are coming into Turkey. Many of them have ethnic cousins in Turkey and they are getting refuge in Turkey. So that is becoming a sore point with the Russians as well. At the same time, it's giving Turkey leverage in this area also. While this has been going on, another little war has broken out. The first war in Central Asian region since the breakup of the Soviet Union between any two Central Asian nations. So just as the big Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit was going on in Samarkand, which Prime Minister Modi also attended, just at the same time, Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan, two neighboring countries, in a way quite brotherly countries, also exchanged blows, but in that battle also, where again a couple of hundred people died, Kyrgyzstan, which has a smaller population, which is a smaller country than Tajikistan, got the better of the exchanges simply because Kyrgyzstan also was able to employ Bayraktar drones sold to them by Turkey. Now, Tajikistan also wanted these drones. Kyrgyzstan put pressure on Turkey not to sell these. But as Kyrgyz Foreign Minister Jeanbek Kulubayev told his parliament, the Turks told them that, look, don't tell us not to sell to Tajikistan. This is business. The fact, however, is that so far they haven't sold to Tajikistan. So one, they've got this instrument available, instrument of hard power, where another country can use it to push its own military agenda. At the same time, they can use it as a tool of diplomacy as well, which means you can buy our weapon, thank you very much, we'll take your money and give you a receipt, so you got it all. But if you are a good boy, if you listen to us, maybe we will not sell it to your enemy. Maybe that's a message that Turkey gives to India as well. Turkey has been selling the same Bayraktar drones to Pakistan. So maybe the message to India is, you guys also buy this from us. We are a much bigger country. You can buy a lot more. I can do co-production with you. Where is the problem? And please do note the fact that at the last SCU summit at Samarkand, Narendra Modi, after quite some time, had a meeting with Erdogan. That is the power of a country which should be in a deep mess because of its economy, but that is its power because it's able to leverage so brilliantly its geography, its geostrategic location, its military-industrial complex, specific in some directions with some products which are killer products in today's market, its ethnicity and its soft power. Now, what is the limit to say Erdogan's ambition, or what is the limit to say Turkey's reach? Now, Crimea, we talk about Crimea, and even Western experts, Western powers also believe, and they say so, that they don't believe that Ukraine is going to get Crimea back. Crimea was annexed by the Russians in 2014. Crimea had a Russian majority, etc., etc. It was already run more or less like an autonomous territory. So they think it's unreasonable for Ukraine to dream of getting Crimea back, and probably they'll never get it back. It's just a negotiating position. But that doesn't stop Erdogan and Turkey from demanding a role in Crimea. So Erdogan, in fact, has been saying, he made a statement in August addressing the Russians, addressing Putin, saying, please leave Crimea to Crimeans. Why is he saying that? He's saying that because Crimea also has a population of a community called Crimean Tatars, and they also happen to be ethnic Turks. So once again, wherever there is a Turk, wherever there is a community of ethnic Turks or Turkic people, this Turkey, Erdogan's Turkey, thinks it has a role. And then in that neighborhood, to get influence, it's able to use that currency of the Bayraktar drone. So I'm sharing with you an article by James Dorsey from Global Village Space, which gives you quite a bit of details of this. And there is also a quote out of the speech, and also a quote from what Erdogan said in August. He said, and I'm quoting, addressing Putin, these are our descendants and also people who are living in Crimea. If you go away, if you leave it to them, it will be a relief for Crimean Tatars as well as Ukrainians. So here is somebody जिसको हम हिंदी में कहते हैं हर किसी के फटे में टांग अड़ाने को तैयार है. Wherever he sees a crisis in this entire region, he is quite willing to get involved. At a very low cost. He also got involved in Syria because he saw his own interest in Syria. In fact, in Syria, his interest, Turkey's interest, Erdogan's interest, and Russia's interest run contrary to each other. And yet they've managed to balance that conflict in the style that maybe 500 years ago in the medieval world, people used to divide up territories and also divide up their conflicts. In the same article in Global Village Spaces, I find a quote from Robert Kaplan, who is a very well-known global strategic expert, who says, and again I quote, he says, were the Kremlin regime to wobble because of factors stemming from Ukraine war, Russia could become a low-calorie version of Yugoslavia, unable to control historic territories in the Caucasus, Siberia and East Asia. That's as far away as that, because the center might not hold, and that's the concern. And because the center itself is wobbly, that's the reason Putin is now so worried about his peripheries. And that's why this fear of what's happening with the Muslim population of Dagestan, because they are the ones who are agitating most of all. The current lot of Chechen rulers, he has compromised to himself. That's why Chechen army or the so-called Chechen militia is fighting with him. But that is not true of Dagestan. So on Dagestan, a member of Russian parliament, that is Bini Sultan Hamzayev, he made a statement. He said, look, all this trouble in Dagestan is being caused by Turkish Kumyuks. And they're all part of the Turkish jihadi population. So once again, see this big expanse of land, and I will tell you how many people are involved. This is a lot of territory and a lot of empty spaces. So if you see these spaces, Kyrgyzstan is only 66 lakh people. That's less than a third of the population of Bombay. 66 lakh people. Azerbaijan is 1 crore people. Armenia, which Azerbaijan's been fighting with, is just about 30 lakh people. Very small population. Kyrgyzstan with about 66 lakh people fighting Tajikistan, which is 95 lakh people. These two countries then share their border with the Uyghur regions or Xinjiang region of China. At the other end, they share their borders with Azerbaijan, which then goes into Georgia and then onwards into Dagestan, then Armenia a bit to the west, and then there is Turkey. If you see this region, And such a small number of people, even in these so-called republics that Russia took away or pulled out of Georgia, how many people live? In Abkhazia, it's 2.5 lakhs. In South Ossetia, it's 57,500 people. So maybe if I look at Delhi, this is half the population, say, of Paharganj, or maybe less than the population of Hauz, Mumbai, Bengaluru, Hyderabad, any city, since there are many people out here who know those cities better, people from those cities, they can figure out how large a population does 57,000 look like. And yet the Russians, using their dadagiri, have created a republic out of that many people. So this is a very disturbed and very unsettled neighborhood. And you know what? I can't go away without telling you a story. Republic of Georgia has a population of just about 37 lakhs. And yet it was Georgia that produced Joseph Stalin, who built the Soviet Empire and ruled all of the Soviet Empire with such a tough hand. Edward Shevardnadze, the last foreign minister of the Soviet government, later became the president of Georgia. So he was a Georgian. Georgia also is a place where the first big secessionist movement started and public protests, mass protests started. And the Soviet armed forces didn't know how to deal with them. So they used nerve gas, or what looked like nerve gas, and more than 20 people were killed in April of 1989. And that then led to a chain effect, a chain reaction all over. It spread then to Azerbaijan, it spread to other Central Asian republics, Armenia, and that's when the breakup of the Soviet Union started. So story there is that around that time, Bhutta Singh was India's home minister, late Bhutta Singh. And his sons had been caught in what looked like a little scandal. And we were doing a story about this in India Today. I used to work in India Today. And he then called our editor, Arun Puri, to say, listen, I know that your reporter is doing a story. He's asking us questions, me and my sons, but I'd rather talk with all of you directly and openly. So will you come and have dinner with us? So Arun Puri took me along and we sat for dinner with Bhutta Singh. So apart from other things he might have told us in his own defense and that of his sons, he also told us a story. And he said, look, Soviet Union's foreign minister was in town, and one evening I was asked to host a dinner for him. So at the dinner, I did commiserate with him and I said, listen, I'm sorry, I believe that in the region where you came from, there was this trouble, lots of people got killed and the armed forces took some action. And he said, Shevardnadze said, how do you deal with people? How do you deal with mobs? We couldn't deal with a few thousand. In your country, hundreds of thousands of people come out and protest. How do you deal with them? We just saw a few thousand in Tbilisi, our capital, and we used very heavy destructive weapons. How do you deal with them? Bhutta Singh smiled and told us that he said to Shevardnadze, and he was telling us a story in Punjabi, I'll translate it for you. He said, Your Excellency, je tusi kende ho, te 3-4 battalion mein CRP di thode kol bhej dena. They will handle it very well. So, Your Excellency, if you permit me, I'm happy to lend you 2 or 3 battalions of CRPF. They are very used to dealing with situations like these. So since we've been talking at such length about this complex, fascinating region, what better way to conclude this with this equally fascinating story?